best and the most memorable was the mountain gorillas. I was incredibly fortunate, and I got to spend 8 days with a family of 14 mountain gorillas in Bwindi in Uganda, and it was just incredible. I wouldn't spend the night with them. I'd walk out, but come in right at daybreak and then spend the whole entire day with them. And then the guide would come and get me at the end of the day, and I'd go out to sleep in a campground or whatever. But that was pretty amazing.
That's Gregory Franklin, and this is The Stories That Brought You Here, a podcast dedicated to learning about some of the stories from people living in and around the Salish Sea. I'm your host, Chris Wakalek. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got a little bit of a doozy here today because my guest on the show today has got some incredible stories to tell. So you heard that first one off the top about photographing gorillas in Africa. Gregory will talk about that as well as photographing bears in the wild throughout various places in the world and his method and philosophy behind getting up close and personal with bears. We will also go really in depth into the story of the building of Gregory's home, Franklin Castle. It's this amazing structure on the island that took him over 10 years to build. Made of stone and based on 15th and 16th century architecture, it is a phenomenal structure. We actually recorded the podcast inside his home, and it was so cool that we did. Gregory's going to go into a lot of the interesting details about the building of the house, how it was conceived, and he'll also explain how a devastating situation in his life would eventually lead him to building this home. But before that, it led him to carving a 26-foot tall traditional healing pole on his property. All that and so much more in an amazing interview that's coming up in just a few minutes. But before we get started, I have a little story for you, and that is about my dad. When I was in my early teens, my dad began having health issues. As the next few years went by, those issues became more and more serious, and by the time I was 17, I think my dad realized that his life was going to be coming to an end soon. And in the summertime, I can remember the two of us, him laying on one couch, me laying on the other, watching daytime TV together. It was during those days that he tried to pass along stories of his life, and I, being a bored and somewhat self-absorbed teenager, I wasn't really able to hear the stories my dad was trying to tell me. I knew that he wanted to pass along information of his life, but I just wasn't really present or capable to hear it. He wound up dying less than a year later, and I don't really have a lot of regrets in my life, but that's one that's never gone away. There are little snippets and nuggets that I remember, like he always stood up for the underdog, and how difficult life was as a logger, which is a profession he had for a period of time. But him being the youngest of 9 children, and both of his parents passing away before I was born, I'm not really left with a lot of paternal family history. When I started this podcast in 2018, that was one of the many motivations for wanting to capture people's stories. As more and more episodes of this podcast came out in those early years, I began hearing from people on the island who were enjoying what I was doing, and they mentioned that they were lamenting the fact that they didn't have a recording of a now deceased loved one. I had many people tell me this, and it really resonated with me because I have the same story. So I got to work in figuring out how I could create audio memoirs for people, and in 2019, I launched that service. On and off since that time, it's something I've been doing, working with individuals privately to record their life story for their family members to have. And it's so important to me that just in the last few weeks, I've taken the plunge to go into this full time. So if you have ever wanted to record your own or a family member's life story, I have a website you can go to where you can find all the information you need, and it's myaudiomemoir.com. There you can find details about how the process works, and there is a link for that website in the show notes. And you can contact me if you have any questions, which I urge you to do. I'd be happy to let you know more and help you figure out how you can turn your own or a family member's story into a legacy. myaudiomemoir.com. Thank you very much for listening to that. Now here's my interview. with Gregory Franklin.
I enjoy all wildlife, but bears in particular. I used to go camping and there's bears around the tent and what have you, and I always enjoyed them. The photography started, I traveled a lot all over the place, and my friends here, one day they said, you could just be making this stuff up. You could just be watching television programs and documentaries and then tell us you've been here and been there and done all this stuff. And we laughed and joked about it because we'd had a few drinks. And after the evening was done, I'm thinking about, they're right. I have nothing to show or there's no show and tell. So I decided to do photography so that I could take photos. And what better place to start than with bears? A great place. Let's just start with bears. So that's how that sort of started. I was kind of guilted into it. And then I just started booking my vacations and doing all my stuff that usually had a bear element in it for the next several years. I am technically a photographer, but I've never taken not 1 hour of class of photography, nothing whatsoever. I just grabbed a camera and started going to work. And so that's how all that came about.
Okay. Well, if you mind sharing about locations you went to, about your photography that you had with bears, because I find this very interesting. I think it's amazing. So maybe we could start with grizzly bears, perhaps. Where was the first place that you spent time documenting grizzly bears on film?
You say grizzly bears, but I'm going to expand that a little bit. I was offered a trip going up the coast on a sailboat called the Achiever, and it belongs to Rain Coast Environmental Group. We traveled slowly up the coast, and our main aim was to photograph bears and be around bears. But our destination was actually the Kermode bears on Princess Island up the coast close to Haida. And that was going to be sort of our end destination, to go photograph the Kermodes or the spirit bears. And so, but on the way, we of course ran across lots and lots of grizzly bears and black bears and Kermodes. So that they all got grouped into one sort of a vacation or one outing to photograph the bears. And that was a good place to start.
Okay. And so when you're photographing the bears, are you at a distance? Are you a little close? How does that work?
Well, can I go back and explain why?
Please do. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
So I had a place in the UK, and it's in the row housing bit. And my neighbor, he was an awesome guy. It was like, it reminds me of that show where there was this Wilson guy, and he was a Wilson on the other side of the fence. And so we talked over the fence. And one evening we're talking over the fence, and he introduces me to some people, but I can't see them. They're over the fence. And so I said, this is ridiculous. Why don't you come over to my side and we can have some beers on my... And so they came over, and the husband and wife, they sat down, and she was more interested and she's looking at she asked if I had photos to show. And I said, sure, on the computer, you can see some of the stuff. And by the end of the evening, I had a signed contract with them because they worked for the education system in Europe, which I had no idea. And they're contractors, and they look for interesting things to bring into schools and all that sort of stuff. And I had a signed contract to photograph for them, and job done. So that's where the contract comes in. But part of the contract, because this will all my photographs, they all go into the education system. And I did lots and lots and lots of presentations in the schools in Europe and everywhere along with my photography. And it was mostly on career days. So what they were interested in was they could really very easily get some Nat Geo people to come in and give talks and what have you, and set up their stuff. But they've got cameras and lenses that they go, okay, well, this is $500,000 to this kit and what have you. You can't talk to a grade 10, 11, 12-year-old student and say, this is what it's going to cost you to even start. It just doesn't work. So we agreed upon a figure of $2,000. So my camera kit, counting my camera bag, my backup camera, my camera, lenses, everything, 100% cannot be over $2,000. So what that does is it limits me from sitting on one mountain and taking photographs on another mountain, that distance. I have to be close up. So everything I've done in the past is all close up photography. So my bears are all close up. Everything is close up. Hippos, gorillas, everything I've done is all close up.
Okay, and so when you say close up, how close up are we talking here?
Well, if we had visual stuff, I could show you in the bear book, but there's lots and lots and lots of bears, polar bears included, within 1 meter. Like it's all face to face. It's all close, and we visit and we smell each other and do all the stuff. But the usual is probably 2 or 3 meters away.
Okay, wow. That's incredibly close. I think most people out there haven't been that close to a bear before, or any wild animal, unless they're in a zoo situation, for instance. Right. Yeah. So what is that experience like, being that close to a bear in its natural habitat?
I've never even thought about it that way. It doesn't bother me. The bears, to me, bears in the wild. I'm talking in the wild, not bears that are dump bears in a town somewhere. Bears in the wild that aren't acclimated to humans. We've got nothing to worry about. We shouldn't be afraid of them, and they're not afraid of us. We just have to make aware of our presence, and they come close up. And I can't talk about other people. I just have to talk about myself. But they come and they smell my hands, or they get anywhere close to me and they go, ugh, he doesn't smell any good. I'm not going to eat him. And they turn around and walk away or keep their distance or whatever it is. I have this book that's laying here in front of you. I photographed all the bears of the world, all of them close up, and I never had a single act of aggression from any one of the animals. I don't carry bear spray. I don't carry a gun. I don't carry anything. I don't carry food. I'm just there, talk to them all the time, and they come and they visit, and we chat, and away they go.
Okay. This is amazing. What sort of things do you say to the bears when you're close by talking?
Well, I say absolutely anything because they don't recognize, But to me, the important part is to keep my voice very similar to what it is now. Don't do any, cadence. Don't do anything like this that they could recognize as fear or aggression or anything like that at all. It's just very calm. Tell them how beautiful they are and tell them, can I see your teeth? And, it's almost like comedy hour, but, and smile a lot. And everyone says, well, don't look in their eyes. And I go, no, I always look in their eyes. That's how we communicate. And so that's just me. I'm not ever saying that anybody else should do that, but that's how it works for me.
Yeah. When did you first discover this ability to be able to have that relationship with bears?
Well, even long before I ever started photographing, when I was camping in the interior camping, and you always run into a bear somewhere. Now you have to be a little bit more careful. Those are more dump bears. They are used to people in campers and stuff. So then you have to be a little bit more careful. But if I happen to be in a remote area where they aren't used to people, I never ever minded. If I was cooking bacon in the pan and a bear comes walking up, I would never ever holler at it or do anything. It would come and I would, of course, never give them food, but I would talk to them and they would just come wandering by and smell everything and just keep walking. I quite enjoyed that. I think that's proper etiquette, I think, for them and me.
Totally.
That's how it works for me. So
I seriously find this so amazing because I might have mentioned this to you before, but one of my greatest fears in life is being attacked by a bear. And I had a dream about it when I was a kid, reoccurring dream. I've spent a significant amount of time in the boreal forest by myself. And I think bears are amazing creatures, but for some reason I'm terrified. And so like what you're describing just is so mind-blowing to me. I think it's so cool.
So one of the things that you have to keep in mind, just so that you understand that this isn't all bears. So the average grizzly bear, black bear, Kermode bear, panda bears, sun bear, they're all, for the most part, vegetarian. They eat roots and leaves and branches and twigs, and that's what they eat. There's one exception, and that's the polar bears. Polar bears are 100% protein. That's it. And all I am is protein to them. I'm nothing else other than protein. I might be bad smelling protein, but I'm still protein. So in polar bears, you normally can't get away with what I've been talking about, with exception of about 5 days in the fall of the year. And nobody knows exactly which 5 days it is, but it's sort of at the end of October, beginning of November. And you have to watch and you watch and you watch. And all the males, very loosely, from a large area, they get together and they will fight. And they fight over territory, they fight over breeding, and they fight over food. And it's just one fight after another, after another, after another, 5 days. They do nothing, and that establishes their priority in life. So if 6 months later, they're eating a seal and another polar bear comes along, they remember each other's smell. If that polar bear kicked this polar bear's butt in the fall, this one will give him the seal. If it's the other way around, the other one will come close, maybe growl a bit and walk away. So they don't fight the rest of the year. It's this is the part where they do all the fighting. So now it's very important to understand that the bears themselves, they remember this. So this is very important for breeding and all this stuff in their mind. So in those 5 days, they do not eat. They do not hunt. They do not kill. They do not eat. And if your timing is correct, in those 5 days, you can be up close and personal. That's all there is. They won't touch you.
How did you stumble across this fact?
It was an Inuit person in Churchill, Manitoba. There's lots of bears there. And he told me about this. And we talked about it. And he said, we hunt polar bears. But traditionally, we hunted them with spears and things. He says, how do you think we ever hunted polar bears? I mean, they're big and they're 1,500 pounds and they can absolutely demolish us. And we would lose half our community if we just went out and decided we needed meat and get a polar bear. So he said, we learned that real quick when to do this. He said, we've told white man about this often, and white people don't want to listen. So, and I'm going, this actually makes sense. And so he said, the time is coming up. And he says, if I had time to stick around, we'd go and watch. And we did. We watched out of helicopters and we watched when the time was. And it's like, okay, here we go.
Wow. This is so amazing as well, too, right? So you referenced the book. So there's this massive book in front of us right now called The Bear Essentials. And we flipped through it a couple months ago when I was here visiting. Bears from around the world you've taken pictures of. What was the motivation to put this compilation together? Because it's amazing. It's an amazing, amazing book.
Well, my motivation was because I hadn't seen a lot of these bears. My motivation was strictly to go and hang out with bears I'd never seen before. Like I had never spent time with panda bears in their natural environment. I'd never spent time with the Kermode bears. You read about them, you hear about them, you see pictures, but I'd never ever spent time with them. So I thought this is a great time for me to do this and then put it together as a book, which was in cooperation or together with the school contract that I had. They would love to see this. And one thing just led to another, and I got to experience a whole lot of bears that I'd never seen before.
What sort of insights do you have about spending time with the different kinds of bears?
Well, the different kinds of bears, I mean, they are all, each and every one is completely separate from just bears in general, depending on where they live. So the panda bears, I'll say, their days till extinction are numbered. They're probably going to be one of the first bears that are going to be extinct, just because they have no more environment. The environment just doesn't exist. All bears have this, but a panda bear has the strongest element of this. They have delayed implantation. So what that means is when they breed, the male does his thing, and the female doesn't fertilize her eggs, gets to keep the ingredients or whatever all goes on inside, gets to keep that. And they have between 6 and 8 months to decide if they want to fertilize their eggs. And also how many whether it's 1, 2, or 3, possibly 4. They very seldom have 4, but they have that power. They can consciously decide that. They'll think about several things. One is their safety, if they're safe, if their environment is safe, if they have lots of food. What else is there? Just those normal basic things. If it's a good plan, then it'll go ahead. And because their environment is no longer safe and they do not have a source of food, they absolutely abort and they never, ever, ever have babies. So all the pandas that are born nowadays, it's all done by human intervention, and we artificially implant them. And once the eggs are fertilized, then the female no longer has control over the abortion. They just have the control over, and I won't say the semen, but whatever whatever that part of is, that they can just flush that out. Once they fertilize, then they have to go through the whole part and actually give birth. So that's where humans intervene, and we artificial implant them, and so that's how all panda bears are birthed right now.
That's amazing. I've never heard that before. That's pretty amazing, really.
So what I'm saying is we've stopped that. All the rest of the bears are still breeding in the wild, and somewhat successfully, but not pandas. They're done.
And then as well too, like having spent time with black bears, for instance, what's your impression of black bears?
Oh, I don't know. From all the bears, they're the most prolific bear there is. They will be around forever, and they adapt to anything. They're dump bears, garbage bears. They eat dogs and cats. It doesn't matter to them. They're gonna always be around. They're the sort of the rat of all the bears. They're going to survive no matter what.
Go black bears!
Yeah, exactly. Everyone else is going to, fade away, but not the black bears.
So, in the time that you spent among black bears, anything that stands out to you about their behavior or their demeanor at all that's different than other bears?
Not really. There's not a whole lot. If you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. But they're going to come into your territory. They're not afraid of any of that sort of stuff. So you better be aware of that. And then that's where the conflict comes in. But they don't mean any harm. They're not out to hurt you. They're not out to eat you, because we don't taste good and we don't smell good, and they don't want any part of us, really. Not as far as food or anything else. They don't want us. But we provide food for them. We throw out our garbage, and we have dumps. And so I see them as completely harmless. And the harm that they do is because of what we have done to them, as in we've created dumps and we've created these things. And so now they are somewhat harmful, but they're not vicious or they're not anything like that at all.
In your time that you spent traveling to various places in the world, being with bears, is there any special interaction with the bear that really stands out to you at all?
The best, absolutely the best, it always has been, is the polar bears. Because like I said earlier, in those 5 days they fight, and the fight is never to the death, but it sounds that way and it appears that way. And so it's just mind-blowing, because these animals are 1,500 pounds. They stand 12 feet tall, and all their fights are on their hind feet. So they're always 12 feet tall. And to be 20 feet, 10 feet away from two 12-foot monsters, 1,500-pound bears beating on each other, it's out of this world. The sounds that come from them, because they're serious. They're not playing around, and it's serious stuff. And the grunts and the growls and when they hit each other, I mean, each foot is the size of dinner plates, and when they hit each other in the chest and the air that escapes, the big and this, and just to sit there and watch, it's absolutely incredible. I'll guarantee you that you won't sleep for a few nights, and not because you're afraid. You just won't sleep for a few nights, because it's just so massive beasts, and it's pretty cool.
Pretty cool. Totally understatement for sure. So yeah, amazing. You mentioned also taking photographs of hippopotamuses and other photography that you've done in Africa, I believe.
So one of the portions of the contract was to go into Africa and just spend time. So my longest period there was one stretch, and that was for 9 months. And I slept on the ground most of those 9 months. There was 9 nights I was in a motel. The rest of the time I was on the ground in the Serengetis or in the jungle or in wherever, waking up at daybreak or before with the animals and photographing. So hippos most certainly was one of them. I come from British Columbia. A hippo is something you see on TV, but then when you actually see how big they are, and it's pretty incredible. But all the African animals, there's nothing, we've never seen anything like that here. The animal wildlife is incredible. The giraffes. I mean, it's unbelievable how big they are. And same with the elephants. It's very cool. The lions, it's awesome. The best and the most memorable was the mountain gorillas. I was incredibly fortunate, and I got to spend 8 days with a family of 14 mountain gorillas in Bwindi in Uganda, and it was just incredible. I wouldn't spend the night with them. I'd walk out, but come in right at daybreak and then spend the whole entire day with them. And then the guide would come and get me at the end of the day, and I'd go out to sleep in a campground or whatever. But that was pretty amazing. It was pretty cool.
Okay, well, let's dig into that. So you spent 8 days with a family of gorillas.
Yes.
So what was happening during those days?
Well, there's not much happening as far as they're just living. So all they do is eat, eat and sleep and grunt and groan and fart once in a while, and that's it. That's all they do. But it was just so fun to be with them. And one of the rules about all wildlife is you should never touch them. But gorillas are close enough that you can if you want, but you shouldn't. I wasn't sure, but I thought I would try. So I got a camera body exactly like my camera, exactly the same, and it wasn't working. But the lens was still working, so it still made the same noises. So I went, and of course the young gorillas, they're the most curious. So they come and they pull your hair and they do all that sort of stuff. And so day one, I had the body of the camera that made the noises and what have you. And so I would click it and whatnot, and that fascinated them. And so after a while, they were just really taken by it. So I gave them the camera. And so they're running around pretending to click this thing and making noises, and they thought it was fantastic. They had it up in the trees, and I think it was day 3, I got the camera back. They were done. They were finished with it. And that was great. But I just put it away, and then I dug out my real camera because I hadn't taken a single photo as of yet. Might have been day 4, but anyhow. So then I started photographing, and they weren't afraid of the camera at all.
Wow.
Because everybody was used to it being in their face. And so for the rest of the time, I took photos.
So they were able to hold the camera and sort of use it somewhat functionally? Like
them?
Yeah.
Well, all they have to do is push the button.
Right.
And it makes noise. That's all they carried. They could hold it every which direction, but they're just pushing the button, making noise.
Hey, there we go.
That's it. They weren't, because they had no concept of holding it to their face or anything like that at all. They're just doing this.
Yeah. But you just acclimatize them.
Yeah.
Or they acclimatize themselves to
that. And they just, so that when I started with a real camera, they could care less. They weren't going to take it away. We weren't going to fight over it or anything. Because we're sitting in a group. We're sitting, the mom might be sitting where you are, like 2 meters away, but the little guys are sitting on either side of me or behind me or wherever, and so if I was to introduce it at that point, they would clearly take it away. And then I'd be in trouble. But so that was a fun 8 days of time. And everybody was cool with it. The big old silverback, every once in a while he'd strut and beat his chest a bit, but it didn't take long. And he had ruffled his feathers, and he's tired. It's time for a nap. It's just because I didn't react. I'm just telling him how big and powerful he is, and big muscles he had, and all that kind of stuff. And he eventually just would have a nap.
So when you're interacting with these creatures, I really get the impression that you're very comfortable in these situations.
I'm just trying to think of if I don't think I've ever been afraid. I don't think so.
That's amazing.
I mean, I've been afraid of, let's just say, somebody's farm dog or something, that's just going to tear you from limb to limb, doesn't matter what. That doesn't, I'm not a dog whisperer that can calm some wild dog down. That's not me. But he's not a wild dog either. So he's been trained or injured or had trauma to make him that crazy. But in wild animal part, the wild animals and stuff, there's nothing to, never had fear.
Are you ever asserting yourself, or is it
No.
purely being submissive the whole time?
Submissive the whole time. The whole time. So with bears, for instance, I'm very clear on never approaching, never ever approach. I'll just use bears. Make them aware that you are here, or that I am there, and I'll wave and make sure they see me because their eyesight isn't that good, and I'll keep talking so that they can hear me. And if they want to approach me, totally fine. But I'll never ever approach them, never. So it's always a good, safe thing, because even the most gentlest approach is still an act of aggression. It's not, you're not being aggressive to hurt them, but I let them do all those actions, because then there for sure isn't going to be a problem. Because you never know what they're thinking if you approach them. That's just me. That's just my thoughts. So I have never ever approached a bear. I'll just sit, and I have enough of them come up to me, and I'm totally good with that.
That seems like a pretty key part to this whole thing, actually. Instead of you approaching them, let them approach you. That seems like a golden rule. And also being submissive the whole time as well, too, right?
It is for me. It is. I give, when I do presentations, I give an example of that, and I always say, so let's just pretend you're sitting with your family in your living room, and you're on the sofa, and your wife might be preparing dinner in the kitchen. 2 kids are playing Legos on the living room floor, and a man just walks into your home, doesn't knock, doesn't do anything, walks in and sits down and wants to play Legos with your kids. So that scenario, you are going to scream, the kids are going to scream, mom's going to scream, they're on the phone, 911, all this kind of stuff, because this is completely wrong. So that's one scenario. So now the same exact family, same man is out on the street kicking a soccer ball with other kids and whatnot, and your kids are standing there going, can we go outside and play soccer too? And mom will come and go, sure, just be back in 20 minutes because dinner will be ready. Going out to play with the same man. And it's just, the difference is the man is approaching you or the man is not approaching you. That's the difference. That's the only difference. It's the same man. And that's, wild animals are, in my mind, are exactly the same. Don't approach them. Let them do the approaching.
No, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a heck of a lot of sense. You said you're sleeping on the ground for almost every night except
Yes.
a handful of them. How was that experience for you? Had you been to Africa before that? Was that your first time there?
Some parts of Africa was most certainly my first time, but I had been to several places in Africa before, but not under, it was different, completely different, in a much safer, I'll say safer environment, like staying in proper lodges and doing all that sort of stuff, driving in a Jeep and although we did some Jeep driving as well, but it was, number one, I had never been so happy when I got home to have a shower, because even in the hotels, you couldn't get proper showers. It just didn't work. And, yes, and to get a proper night's sleep, it was very, very, there was very seldom did I ever get to sleep all night long, because I'm sleeping in a tent or on the ground, and there's a hippopotamus walking somewhere, within a meter of you, grazing away, and it's just like, well, you just don't move, The hippo knows you're there, and I know it's there, but that's okay. It's a vegetarian. It doesn't eat humans, and it walks by and it does all this stuff. So if you scare it, it's gonna probably attack or run away or attack and what have you. So there's just so much of it. You wake up to lions roaring at 4:00 in the morning, and hyenas, and the sound effects are huge. At night when it gets dark, the animals come alive. It's just, not many of them go to sleep. They're everywhere. It's it's really, it's the first few nights where you start, "Oh, wow." And then all of a sudden it's like, so why aren't the lions roaring tonight? Are they sneaking up on me? Or that thought crosses your mind. And it's like, oh, there they are. They're roaring over there. That's fine. We're good now. And it's, I don't know. I found it very exciting.
Did that experience change you in your life somewhat? Because 9 months it's a considerable amount of time. And, you just mentioned the fact sleeping on the ground is different than sleeping above the ground. Like
Right.
I love camping. I love sleeping outdoors, and it's a different experience than crawling into a bed. Right. But do you feel like that experience for those 9 months changed you a little bit, or?
Not really, as far as the sleeping on the ground bit. And I mean, everything most certainly changed, but it was, the whole continent of Africa is absolutely incredible when it comes to wildlife, and I have a much deeper appreciation for wildlife than I ever did before going to Africa. When I came back, I wrote about Africa and about, I just call it two sides of Africa, and one, of course, is that absolute beautiful part with all the animals and all the all the how they behave and how they interact with humans, and they're just incredible. It's just, you can't even explain that. So that's one side, and the dark side is the humanity in Africa. It's just, it's not good. It's just not a good place to be. So was I ever afraid of the animals? Absolutely not. And I don't know how many times I was afraid of the humans. It's just wasn't a comfortable place for me. And that was just me. Other people are more comfortable, but I was not.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty tough place to live. There's some places, some people say, well, okay, well, you can live in South Africa and that's pretty good. And it's like, yeah, that's better, but it's still not pretty good and by my standards. Still a tough place.
Yeah, I've always kind of associated Africa with having a certain element of violence to it.
Absolutely. So the animals, that's the part I like to focus on. The animals, they're in trouble because I know they've outlawed and banned hunting for most of that big game stuff, but it doesn't matter if a Western world type of a person comes there and offers a local African person to guide them so that they can shoot whatever it is, big animal, and offers them $10,000 or $15,000, they're going to take it because that's more money they've ever seen in their lives, and that's just how it works. And they're gonna take it to stay alive, to feed their families and what have you. And so there's so much poaching going on, and they claim it's been slowed down, and it could be, I don't know, but there's still a lot going on. So that's the animals' biggest issue, is all the poaching.
Mm.
Really is, but that's the human element to it. It's not them. So I found I had a hard time with that. But as long as I just focused on animals, I was doing really well. It was all good.
Right on.
Yeah, it was really, really cool.
We find ourselves this evening in your home, the Franklin Castle. Amazing structure that we're in right now. Do you feel like delving into a bit of the story about how this place came to be?
Well, I don't know how far back you want me to go, because the healing pool that we talked about, that's sort of part of this. So we can start back there, but we're going to probably end up going there if we don't.
Let's start with the healing pool.
Okay. So I'll start one step before that. So on this exact same location, different footprint, I had built a home previously, and that's sitting here in this book. I don't know if you've seen that or not. I don't think you did.
No, I haven't, no.
Anyhow, I decided that for my well-being or whatever, I wanted to build a home. I wanted to build one of two homes. I wanted to build an old style post and beam home, or I wanted to build a stone house, a stone home. And at that time, I had trees available to me. It just seemed more readily available to me to do that. So I had a forestry permit for the interior, and I went and I cut trees down, Western larch, and I milled all of them and brought them all here. And I spent 10 years building a post and beam house. I liked it better than this place. I still think it was better. I did a better job on that place than this. So, and again, it was the same. I designed and drew all the plans and put all the stuff together, built the home, took 10 years. So I was a week. I had finished it by 1 week, and I was just getting my final occupancy. And I left a pot of chicken noodle soup on the stove inadvertently, and blah, blah, blah. Make a long story short, I burnt my house down. And couldn't blame anybody but me. I completely forgot about pot of soup and walked away from it. Anyhow, so after that experience, to make it a whole real quick story, I had never been angry ever in my life. I'm not an angry person, but now I was angry, and I was angry at myself for being so, like, that's just not something I do. I just don't forget that kind of stuff, but I did. And it was very, very costly. So I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do any of those sorts of things, the normal stuff. It was just a mess. And so there's some counselors locally here. They came to, attempted to help me. And so we talked about some stuff, but it didn't seem to work what I wanted to do. And so they said I should maybe write. If I could just write just whatever comes out of your chest or out of your heart or out of your tummy or whatever. And so I did. And I just sat down and just wrote 32 quick pages. It just came pouring out in 3 hours. Well, that didn't work either. That didn't do anything for me. So I walked on my property. I walked down to the lower part of the property, and I have a climbing wall there. It's a natural climbing wall, not a man-made. It's just a natural climbing wall. And I sat on top of the wall with my feet hanging over the edge. And I was just contemplating what to do next and what not to do. And so eventually that climbing wall didn't do much for me at that point. So I stood back up and I climbed back up to the same elevation as we're at now. The house is here. And I leaned up against this big old cedar tree, and I hadn't leaned up against it for more than 5 seconds, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. So it took a bit of doing and organizing and the whole bit, but I carved. It's a 26-foot traditional healing bowl. So I got Victor Reese. He was a native person, a native chief here on Pender, and so we did all the appropriate cultural, I think the word is appropriations, for that. And so it was all approved that I could use some of their animals and some of their figures. And so I spent 6 weeks, day and night, carving that healing pole with one chisel and one hammer, and just chiseled away. By the time I was finished after 6 weeks, I was ready to start afresh, start a new home, start whatever I wanted to do. I was over the anger. I'd gotten rid of all the physical stuff because it was all physical chiseling, and it's a bit more of a masculine thing than it is feminine sometimes. But anyhow, it was all out of my system, and I've never looked back since then. That's it.
So you spent 6 weeks, day
6
and night,
Yes.
working on this. What's going through your mind when you're working on this? What are you experiencing? What are you feeling during that time? Do you remember?
Well, it just needed to get done. There weren't a whole lot of emotions. It was just worked hard, exhausting, hardly any sleep. People brought food, so I didn't have to worry about any food, anything at all. It was a live tree to start off with. It was a live tree, and I climbed it, and I cut it off at 26 feet because that's how much I required. I left it in its roots. I did not cut the tree down like most totems are done. So I left it in its roots so it stays grounded. Yeah, that was important to me. But before I actually started to carve, I had figured out what I needed to carve on the pole. I'd figured out my animals and how I could tell that 32-page story, how I could tell that story on this 26 feet of pole. But then it became very, very, very easy. So I never, ever drew any of the characters. I never chalked them on or crayons or pencils or anything, never measured anything. I just started at the bottom and I just started carving. And by the time I got to 26 feet, I was done. I had everything was all finished and complete. And it was one of those things, and I can't remember who the famous person, some artist said it, but I can't remember who it was, where they talk about that it was easy to do because all I had to do is remove the wood that wasn't the sculpture. Somebody said that, and that was very much what I needed. I didn't even have to think about it. I just had to remove wood that wasn't part of the healing pole, and that's all I did. I just worked and worked and worked, and then I'm done. I cleaned everything up, took tools away. I never went back, and I went, well, maybe I could fix that up, or nothing was finished, and never been back since. I mean, I'm there every day, but never to fix anything. There's nothing needs fixing. It's finished.
And you said it's a living tree.
It was.
It was living.
I killed it. It died because I cut the top off. In order to carve it, you have to take the bark and the cambium layer off, and so that automatically kills the tree. So I completely killed it in its former life, but it's now had an incredible life after that. It really caught on. So we had some local writers here, and it ended up being in the, Victoria and Vancouver papers, and it's been in some books, and it's been in lots of magazines and all that sort of stuff. It's really, really caught on. There's been literally, I have more people coming, spending time at that healing pole than I do in my home, to come and look at my home. So it's been a real asset for myself and also other people. I had no idea. I was just doing it for myself, and other people decided they wanted to use it as well. So
I think it's such a fantastic story. Who are some of the other people that are coming to visit? What are the scenarios involved with that?
Well, I mean, I know lots of the people, but I'm not going to name names because healing is always very personal. But one of the groups, which I can talk about a little bit, not much, was from the Highway of Tears. I think I had 23 or 26 people came here in one group, and from the Highway of Tears, and spent a day or day and a half here and at the healing pole. They never came to the house. I never spoke to them, but they were out there chanting and singing and doing the whole bit. So, it's that kind of stuff and I've opened it up to the public, but I don't want to be part of it. I don't need to explain it. Somebody can just come and experience it. I'm not a healer, and I'm not a therapist or anything. I don't ever want to play that role or even appear to play that role. If this can possibly help somebody, then please do, and help yourself. Right now, I have 5 people that have asked if they can spread their ashes of their family members or friends, and which have spread their ashes there and with their own ceremonies and all that sort of stuff. So, and hopefully it continues. Hopefully it continues helping somebody else, not just me. And the good part, it's taken a long time, but it's a slow thing. But now, and this is more in the recent years, the Anglican Church, which is directly across the road. So I knew some of the people. I'm not a member, but I knew some of the people, and they were very willing to help and do all that sort of stuff. Because of properties here are very limited in parking, the Anglican Church, I have leased their parking lots, and so I get to use their parking lots year round. And with the help of Department of Highways and other legal people, we've managed to get a path from the Anglican Church, the parking lot, over through the woods, and it comes out at the healing pole, so people can park at the church, and then they can walk along a path that doesn't involve the road, and they can spend all day or however long they want, and they can walk back safely, and they don't have to worry about getting run over with cars. And so the Anglican Church has been very, very helpful in making all that happen. It works well.
I just think this is so special, right? The fact that it's really resonated with a lot of people, it sounds like. That
Yes.
People are coming here to the island, to your property, to spend time with this creation of yours. I just think it's quite remarkable.
That's not how I feel. I don't feel like that it's a creation. It doesn't feel that way to me. To me, it feels like, I don't know. It's more of a, and I don't want it to sound clinical either, but it's more like a Band-Aid or something. putting a Band-Aid on a kid's arm that's got a bruise that's not a healing thing. It's not. And this is what this feels like. It's a very tangible thing, and people can pull some energy out of it and or bring some energy to it, and it becomes a bit of a living entity. It's different than what should I say? I don't know. It's just different. That's all. It's very good. Other people get to use it, and it's great.
Lovely.
It's very, very cool. It's like sharing a wheelchair with somebody, and it helps them, and it helped me. And so when I first started chiseling on it, there was 2 pileated woodpeckers, and they took a great interest in what I was doing, and they were trying to help. And so, so one day they were particularly aggressive in helping, and so I had a chat with them. I put my hammer and chisel down, and we had a chat, and I made an agreement with them that they could have all the trees on my property. They could help themselves to everything, but this one needs to be left alone. And they haven't been back. They're back here all the time, but they haven't gone to work on it at all. They've left it completely alone. I know it sounds like I'm making it up, and for the most part I am, but I did have that conversation with them, and they would never, of course, never listen to me, but it worked. Whatever it was, it worked.
It's very, very kind of the woodpeckers, for
Absolutely.
sure. Yeah. So after the completion of the healing pool, what comes after that?
Okay. So now I'm ready to proceed to try to figure out what I'm going to do with my life and as far as living accommodations. So it took me a few months, but I finally sort of came up with a plan that the insurance company had rented me a home that I absolutely didn't like. I didn't like being there. And so I approached them. So part of my policy said that when you have 100% loss, the insurance company pays for your accommodations while it's being replaced, And so between the appraiser and myself, the insurance guy, between us, we decided how much it was going to cost them for accommodations for me. And so I took a reduced amount, but I took it in cash. And I discussed it with him, and he already knew me well enough by that time that I was a big traveler. So I left Pender in 1 calendar year. I completely left Pender, and for a calendar year, I traveled around the world. I covered all 7 continents of the earth, including Antarctica. I was there for a month. But in that year, and this wasn't every day, but this was kind of how it worked. So I would travel and enjoy, wherever I'm at. And then in the evening, from about dinner time or so, I would be in my hotel room or wherever I was staying, and I would start drawing and sketching, and in my mind put the plans together for this house. And after a year of that, I had it all together. I would spend 3, 4, 5 hours every evening and just putting it together in what I wanted to do and how I wanted this to happen and all that sort of stuff. So then it was a matter of coming back and getting a building permit and getting the engineers on board, and away we went.
Well, we're going to take our time with the castle here because this place is amazing. But maybe if you could walk us through what the first few steps were in terms of getting this place started.
The main thing is, and I wasn't exactly sure at that point yet how this was going to come together. It was going to be a stone house, but I needed it to meet modern building codes because that's the only way we can build in today's world. And so I started about 800 AD. I start looking at construction sites and what have you in the UK and Europe and France and Germany and all over Europe, and to see how those older structures were built. And I did that for every year, but I'll start at 800. I couldn't see how I could get it past the modern building codes from structures that were built then. So I kept moving up 100 years, 100 years, 100 years, 100 years, and I always ran up against very similar things. Like, there's just no way that modern building codes are going to let me do this. And so then I ended up at the 1500s. And when I got to the 1500s, the structures then made sense to me, and I was almost certain I could make the modern building codes. I could make it together with an engineer, a helpful engineer. I could probably do it. And then it was just a matter of figuring all that stuff out. And I had a brilliant engineer who liked what I was doing, and yeah, just sat down and started drawing it out, and they would throw different details at me and all this sort of stuff, and I have to figure out a different angle of how this has to be and how I'm going to make this work and back and forth, and eventually we had a plan. I drew up the plans, and so when you plan, for me to present it to the CRD for approval, you just need the real basic stuff. You don't need all the details. You just need the basic stuff. So that was pretty easy, and I was going to figure out the details, some of the details later. So I didn't have to do things like plumbing or electrical or any of that sort of stuff in the plans. I had to show where the bathrooms are going to be and just draw in a toilet, but it doesn't talk about how this is going to work. But I figured out all that as we went. So the electrical, as I'm sitting here looking at plugs and switches, that becomes a big challenge because it's stone and you don't have a chance afterwards. It's not like a normal house where you build a house and then you bring in the electricians and they bang away for, a week and then all the electrical's in. Doesn't work here. And so you have to pre-plan all that, exactly where all the wires are going to be and where all the switches are going to be, and that all that needs to be installed exactly whilst you are laying one course after another of stone. But that's okay. It's just a different way. It's still building a house. It's just done in a different order than modern homes were. And so then I also had to figure out, what kind of stone I was going to use. So by spending a lot of time in Europe, there's always a downside to every stone castle, stone house, whatever. They all have downsides. And the downsides are pretty much three things. It's dark, damp, and cold. That's just the bottom line. So I didn't want to spend all this energy and have a dark, damp, and cold house. Then went to work on each one of those individual things. So as far as the stone goes, limestone is one of the lightest, whitest stones that we can use versus granite and other dark ones to bring light into the house, just to make it more light. But because it was structural stone, we have lots of limestone in Canada, all over the place, all over the US, but it's not structural stone. And this was all meant to be structural. So there's only one quarry in Indiana. It's called the Empire Quarry, and it's the only place in North America that you can get structural stone. So every single piece of stone in here all comes from that quarry in Indiana. All gets hauled up. And just to give, just a bit of an example, it's exactly the same stone that the Grand Central Station was built, Empire State Building, the Pentagon, they're all built out of exactly the same quarry, the same stone. It's good structural stone.
You had to get stone from Indiana all the way to Pender Island.
Yes.
How many tons of stone?
It's 600,000 pounds, so that's 300 tons. So 19 semi-loads. So it comes by train out of the quarry. The pieces are 5 feet by 5 feet by 9 feet long, and it comes to Port Coquitlam. And there's a company there that has a massive big head saw. They're capable of cutting those big blocks. And so I ordered the stone from them, cut into basic 5 sizes. And all, for the most part, less than 200 pounds per piece, or right around the neighborhood of 200 pounds. And then they got loaded on semis and brought over here via ferry and what have you. But then I had them all, 1 or 2 truckloads at a time laying out here. And then I had saws, and then I could cut them into smaller sizes that I can then use and put up and build. That's sort of how all that came together, with a few exceptions.
Okay, amazing. All right, so this stone comes delivered to you in smaller sections, about 200 pounds each, and then you yourself are cutting the stone.
Yes.
Okay, and then you have the design. First of all, just so people kind of understand, how long did it take to complete the house?
Well, it took with a month or two of 11 years.
So just to give people some context as to why we're going to spend a lot of time talking about this, because it was a
Right.
very, very extensive job that you underwent here. But can you walk me through the process a little bit about building the house?
So the first thing you have to do, of course, it's a very heavy house as weight wise. And so the foundations have to be incredible to make this work. So it's all sitting on bedrock. So for the first 4 months when I was started, and we started with the foundations, I had hired a contractor and they had a number of employees. And for 4 months we had them here and I just had them pour concrete. That's it. I did all the steel work, all the rebar and all that sort of stuff, but they built the forms and poured the concrete in the whole bit. So in a normal 3-bedroom house, there's usually about 30 yards of concrete. This house has 294 yards of concrete in it, just to support the weight.
Wow.
And it's all sitting on bedrock. It's all drilled and pinned into bedrock and the whole bit. So after the concrete was done, then I took over exclusively. Took over and started putting stuff together. And it goes very slowly. The effort is it works really well if you're just working by yourself because you can actually figure it all out and you have nobody yelling at you and there's no time frames, all that sort of stuff. But that's what my year traveling was all about. So I had all this stuff for the most part figured out. It's all about thinking about it. And then when the time comes, then it's easy. Then you just have to do what you had already thought about and you already did in your mind. So we're sitting here in front of just one example. I have lots of examples, but one example is right sort of beside us here is the Stonehenge element. So this whole wall there's 4 upright pillars, solid stone pillars that are 9 feet tall and stone lintels, solid 24-inch stone lintels across the top. And it has a similar curve to Stonehenge and it's lined up exactly and precisely with the summer solstice and brings in the exact light in the bronze inlays in the floor, the solstice within half a second of accuracy. And that's the front wall of this particular level that we're on. It's 3 levels tall, but the level that we're on, that requires you have to figure that stuff out, exactly where this goes and how it fits together. It doesn't come in a contractor's book somewhere. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a tribute to the people, and I'll say Druids. Somebody's going to correct me and be angry at that, but they most certainly were part of it. It just amazes me that 5,000 years ago, when they built the original Stonehenge, more or less, they had the ability to actually understand the angles of the earth and how the seasons work and how it works together with the sun and how all these elements work. I'm just talking the summer solstice now, but the actual Stonehenge involves a whole lot more. And they had that ability to figure that out. And having the ability is one thing, but they lived in a time where their prime concern, every single day their concern was food and shelter, because they were hungry every day. The kids were dying of hunger, and they have no place to live. But suddenly, thousands of these people get together, and they build this, and they spend their life doing this whilst they have no food and no shelter. It sort of goes against what we would normally think. We would think about, we need to look after food and shelter first, and then we get the time to do this. But who is leading this? How could they convince thousands of people that this needs to be done? I just don't understand that mentality in today's world. We can't organize a turkey dinner. We have trouble organizing a picnic outside somewhere with people and volunteers. And suddenly we have thousands of people doing this, and they're not happy with the stone that's laying in the pasture. They have to drag some rocks from 300-400 miles away. They have to drag some rocks over here because they want those ones. I can't explain it. I don't understand the thought process, but it impresses me that someone can be that committed, that convicted in something that they wanted to do. And so that's why Stonehenge is here. It has nothing to do, I can look on the calendar and find out when solstice is, It has nothing to do with that. It's just, I'm just so impressed that this whole culture of people got together and made this work. And it took a long time, generations and generations of people to actually pull this together. It just blows me away. So out of a tribute to them, this is something that I can do easily, and there it is.
It's pretty amazing. So this, I'm looking at it right now, and it's the wall that's facing out towards the ocean. It's pretty unique little feature of the house. It's pretty amazing.
It's big and it's heavy. It's not going anywhere.
So you spent a year figuring out what you wanted to do, and it took you 11 years to actually finish it. I just want to hear a little bit more about the process, actually, about doing this day in, day out for extensive periods of time that you were working at it, because it's amazing. It's amazing that like you cut the stone, you put it in place, you did all the work, and then not just the laying of the stone, but also the electrical and the plumbing.
All the plumbing, yes, everything.
Amazing. Seriously.
It's if you really want something, it happens. That's how. So it becomes a little bit more of a philosophical thing at this point. What you're asking, where it's a state of mind, or how we think and how we act and react towards that. So I won't say a trick. I think it's very important to lead my life this way, but this is part of it, and it's. I'm struggling for the right words. In order to make something like this work, we can't have a distinction between labor and leisure. At some point, there has to be a balance. So when we think of labor and we think of leisure, we think of opposites. They're opposite. We work hard and then we play, and the two shall never mix. It's that sort of opposite stuff that we look at. And it's very normal. That's how our cultures are. But at some point, those two opposites, they need to come together. They need to, and it's a state of mind, and they need to come together so that they are one. So they are no longer, those words no longer apply. Leisure and or labor and leisure, those words don't apply. Play and work, they don't apply, because they have joined, and it's all one. It's the same thing. It's a balance. It's a flow that works within, and it's a flow. So if there's too much labor, if it's out of balance and there's a bit too much labor and not enough leisure, it becomes stressful. And if there's too much leisure and not enough labor, it becomes boring. So when that balance, when that flow goes between the two, I'm doing leisure and labor exactly at the same time. And then it's no longer a task. You're having productive fun.
I love that term, productive fun.
That's a simplistic term. It's so, because those other words don't exist anymore, because you've created a balance of both of them together. And so for me, it was fairly easy at this point to do that. It just came naturally. And I won't say completely naturally, but I've had the help of a few counselors and whatnot that helped me through some of this, or just lay out some ideas, and it works very, very well. And that's still how I live my day right now. Every day it's not leisure or it's not labor. It's whatever that's in between. So it's the closest that a person can come to. We hear this lots in all kinds of contexts, but it's the closest that a person can come to being present. I live completely in the now. And I can't speak for anyone else. I know it works very, very well for me. So then it no longer becomes when I awake at 4:30 in the morning, I'm excited to get up. Why are you excited to get up? Because I'm going to lay another 2 or 3, 4, 200-pound stones. This is exciting. It's absolute fun. And you can look at the stones, and that's one of the things what limestone is all about. It's all organic. So limestone is just compressed sea life, whether it's animal life or fossils of plant life, flora, fauna. It's just compressed. So we can take a magnifying glass and look at this stuff, and it's all solid fossils. So I'm working with stuff that was alive 350 million years ago, working with it, and it's just exciting, and it excites me that I put these 2 stones down, and it's like they came from a quarry, and this is how it's transformed. It's just a transformation of energy. That's all it is. And I'm the guide. I just guide it. I don't do anything else other than guide it. And I don't know. I just find the greatest pleasure in that. It just pleases me to no end. There's so many different elements to it, but it just makes me very, very happy.
Yeah, this is so wonderful. And I don't want to stop you when you say that there's more elements to it. If you feel like explaining more, please do. Because I think that this is just such important stuff you're explaining right now.
Well, if we look in the other direction from Stonehenge, we're looking at a stone window there. That's carved out of one piece of stone. So there's a tribute there as well, but in a slightly different way. So whilst I was doing all, leading my life, a friend, David, passed away from cancer. Very sad, got it real quick. Brilliant man, gone. So I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to do all this. But, if you think about it long enough, you figure it out. So I went to the southwest corner of Wales to the St. David's Bishop's Palace and the cathedral. And because it was called St. David's, I thought, well, that would be appropriate for this. And I took this window and also the one that's upstairs. I took those 2 windows from, that one comes from the Bishop's Palace. This one comes from the cathedral. And I talked to the maintenance guy, maintenance person, and I told him what I wanted to do, and in memory of my friend David. And so we took, he said, well, whatever, I can't remember which day, I'll say Thursday in the afternoon, that's the slowest time, and we'll get stuff ready. So we ribboned off an area, and I set up scaffolding so I could get up 30 feet and measure that window, and measured exactly and take the same exact scale. And then I could bring it down and we could create a new one, but I would scale it down so it fit my home versus the cathedral. And same with the Bishop's Palace. So he let me set up scaffolding and the whole bit. He helped, of course, so I could climb right up and take all the exact measurements and the whole bit, brought it down so it would fit upstairs in my bedroom. So that's a tribute to my friend David.
Okay. So it might be difficult to describe on audio, but it's a circle and it has 6 arms projecting off of it with another smaller circle in the middle and some intricate designs on the exterior of it, on the inner edges of the circle. How would you describe that for people listening?
Well, for me, it has a lot of emotion, so I'm not even going to go there, but lots of people describe it as a very ornate wagon wheel. that's how other people describe it. It looks like it's a pretty fancy looking wagon wheel.
That is better than my description for sure. So in terms of pointing that out, was that complicated to make?
Not after the whole, the process about going to Europe and measuring it and bringing it down and scaling it down. There's lots of things when you scale it down, it doesn't look right, but to scale it down so it looks right, so it looks like that window that I took it out, it's just, instead of being 10 feet tall, it's only 3 feet tall, and so you have to do all that. But the actual, okay, now we're ready. The stone has come from Indiana, the big blocks of stone, that's come. I have it all laying here, and now it's 4 months of hand carving, and then it's done.
4 months of carving. Yeah. Wow.
There's no machines involved. It's just all by hand. But the 4 months is actually the easy part.
How so?
Well, it's only 4 months. The rest took me longer. I had to fly. I had to do all this sort of stuff and figure it out and hope it's still, you never know if it's going to work. Or, you do all this work and you hope that, Okay. And eventually you end up with this. The other one up top there, that's a slightly larger than this one. The Stonehenge is a tribute to the Druids and whatever other people helped it with Stonehenge. I'm not exactly sure, but all the people that were working there, it's just incredible what they did. This is a tribute to my friend, my buddy David.
Very nice. Just to touch back in with something you were saying when you were speaking about the productive fun and having a balance and merging work and play together, was that something that you've had within you your whole life, or did that take a little bit of time to develop within you?
It started developing when I started building my other house, but when I slowly, eventually ended up with this house, then I was in it 100%. I don't see this as a laborious house at all. I don't think of it as, oh, this was hard, this was difficult to do, and this was, I should have hired more. I don't see it that way at all. I see this as I had fun every single day. And the fun part was the challenges. So there's a lot of logistic stuff. That tall window in the stairwell right behind you, it's a large, large, large window.
It's a massive window.
And I wanted that's how it was meant to be. So then I got quotes from a window company, and we won't talk about the name of them, but I got quotes from a window company in Vancouver. And so they quoted me on that window along with lots of others. So it's fine. So then I built the stone framework to do the whole bit. And the quote was good for 1 year. So it was 11 months and 3 weeks. And then I got a hold of him and said, okay, I'm ready for that window. And the buddy said, oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, but we can't do that. And I said, what do you mean? You quoted me on this. And he said, yes, we have the quote. And I said, it's still valid. And he goes, well, yeah, unfortunately. And I said, so what's the problem? He said, well, we've never, because it's tempered glass, our kilns have never been able to do that. And I said, so why did you quote on this? And he goes, well, people always want just, weird stuff. And so we just give them a price and they always never ever do it. And I said, but I'm gonna. And anyhow, so we went back and forth for a few weeks. And eventually he said, he said he would give me a contact somewhere south of Seattle, people that would do this. I said, well, I don't think it works that way. And he said, well, yeah, they can do it. And I said, no, your name's on the contract. If you know where they're at, you deal with the people south of Seattle. I'm just waiting here for it to be delivered. That's it. Where you get it from, I could care less, And so we went back and forth. Eventually, they came through. They did it. They were stuck on this contract. And so, having said that, so they drop it off in front, right where your car is parked, out in front, 75 yards from here, 50 yards from here. And that's where it goes plunk, and they drop it off. So now to get it in there and in position. So there wasn't a glass company in Victoria or Vancouver that would come out and do it. So now I end up doing it myself. So that became the challenge now. When the glass is here, I can see how big I know how big it's going to be, and so that became the challenge. And it was fun. It's a challenging thing. How is this going to happen? So bottom line is I built a platform ramp right out to the garage. So it's all nice and smooth ramp coming into the house. I took skateboard trucks, and instead of a curved skateboard, I put, 2-inch material on top of the trucks and a whole series of them. And then I got 9 glaziers come out of Victoria. No, 8. 9 counting me. And the 8 glaziers, they came out for the day. It's 1,100 pounds. So we set it onto the trucks, and they had 4 on each side just to balance so it doesn't fall. And because I have it on trucks, I can move it myself. 1,100 pounds, I can just roll it. And it rolled it right inside here. And we rolled it this way up against these posts. And then I had rented, I don't know what this machine is called, but it's for glass, and it has 4 big suction cups. So I attached it to the big beam up top, and then went down and sucked it into the center of the window. And we picked it up, and you can control it. The air compressors run this. So I have my air all running, and it runs all this to keep the suction. Picked it up like this, and then it turns. So that's what this machine does. It turns it. So now we've got it standing this way, And then we picked it up right to the top, and I had scaffolding built back here. So I slide in the scaffolding and moved my railway track right to the base of the window. And then we lowered it. And the 8 guys, again, just balanced the glass like this. And I rolled it like this and right into place. Took us 9 hours to get it from there to there.
9 hours.
And it was 0 effort.
Oh my gosh.
But that's the challenge. That's the fun part. That's the fun part of doing this. When you go, afterwards, it's just like, or even at the end of that day, it's like, yes. Like this was normally impossible or deemed as impossible. It's not impossible because nobody ever was up to the challenge. But that's the fun part. So that's no longer work. This is now pure fun. That's all it is.
It's funny, as I'm watching you and you're talking about fun and explaining these things, it's so clear, the smile on your face and your body language to me, that like you totally believe this for sure. It's
true.
I know, yeah, for sure, definitely. And it's amazing because most of us don't live like this. Most of us attach ideas like, oh my gosh, that was so frustrating. This is like too much work. It's so much effort, right? And I see the energy you're resonating when you're describing this, and this is your truth. And I think this is pretty amazing, right? Because this is somewhere I'd like to get closer to in my life, actually, to be able to merge work and play and find everything to be fun. And I'm just sort of curious about how you found your way there. Was it something like a carving, for instance, that you mentioned that when you were building your first house, this sort of came to fruition a bit for you? Was it something that was always within you, do you think, that just sort of came out, or was it something external that came in?
Well, it's I'm sure a whole lot of those things. I don't. Were we upstairs last time? Did you see my bronze sculpture up there?
I did, yeah.
Yes. So that was a bit of a catalyst. So that sculpture, I'll still talk about it, but it's called Chaos, Order, and Creation on Time. Now, when we think of, in today's terms, when we think of chaos, it's very chaotic. It can go any which way, who knows. And when we think of order, we usually think of something that humans have messed with, and we try to make it, an orderly piece. We try to control the chaos, make it an orderly piece. And then creation, that's a whole different thing. It happens right in the center of all the chaos and all the creation, or all the order. In the middle of all this is still that the word of creation, and all the creation that happens, the seeds of the trees and the babies that are born and animal, all that stuff all happens in the middle of all this chaos and order. And I won't say they're opposites, because there's too many elements to be opposite. Opposite, you can only have 2 elements. So this has a whole lot of elements to it, but it's kind of opposite because chaos and order are completely opposite. And they always, when we think about it, they're always kind of fighting each other, words wise. When I sculpted that bronze thing, the whole idea of putting that together, and it was all about taking the chaos, which is incredible, taking the order, and taking the creation, and showing that all 3 can be in unison and work together and be absolutely beautiful. That's what that was all about. And then the on-time bit, that provides another little bit of an element to it. But when I did that planted that seed. I can do this in anything. When I can take the most extreme things on this earth, chaos and order and creation, those 3 things, when I can take them that are always fighting each other, because chaos will kill the creativity and blah, 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 blah. When I can put that together into something that is beautiful, and it's just amazing in my mind, then why can't I do that to absolutely everything? And that sort of put me, I was kind of there, but that's tangible. It's physical. I can feel that. I can see it. It's not just my imagination working. I can feel it, see it. That's why it's sitting at the end of my bed, because every day when I get up, there it is. And that's how my day is going to go. Exactly like that.
Wow.
It does. It really, really does. It's not difficult anymore. I've done it for so long now that it becomes very natural. It's just natural. Of course I'm going to do it that way. Every issue, everything I have is going to be, it'll be based on exactly bringing that together. And like I talked earlier about that flow is always going to be there. And that balance of stress and boredom, they will figure that balance out. So I won't be stressed and I won't be bored. And then there's just this flow of work and play, absolute work and play.
It's interesting because there's this physical representation of what you're describing that you created through a sculpture, which is a mesmerizing sculpture. I told you this last time. We're like just sitting there observing it, and I was like, wow, you can feel the energy pulsating off of it. And so it's to describe it, it's a cube that has a lot of erratic movement within it, would you say? And how would you describe that to people listening who can't see it?
I have no idea.
Fair enough. Okay, people will have to use their imaginations, but it's so things came together for you in the 3D world a little bit more after you created this three-dimensional object.
Yeah, a lot more. It was like, wait a minute, this is how this can work. And then the fourth element there, it says on time. So this cube is sitting on a slab of wood, and the wood, you can see the rings. So when I say on time, where that element comes in is our clocks, our watches, all the stuff that is based on 3 scales: seconds, minutes, and hours. 3 scales of time. But that's all man-made. That's all man-made, and that part of time just makes us late for everything. We're late for flights, and we're late for the ferry, and we're late for dinner, and we're late for and guess what? We invented it. We invented this late machine that makes everything late. And that's not really how time works on this. So that slab of wood, it has 3 scales of time. It has the rings of the tree, which is the smallest scale. Put all the rings together and you have the slab of tree, and it's petrified. So it's solid stone. So there's 3 scales of time, but that's natural time. So as long as we deal with man-made time, one of the things we will always be is late. Somewhere along the line, we're going to be late. And then we go back to that, what's going to cause us stress. So that piece with natural time, chaos, order, and creation, and those 3 put us into that flow where there's no stress and no boredom, and it's just in an absolute fun, productive, fun mode. And if it's sitting on natural time, we will never be late. Never. So again, no stress, 0 stress. So that whole piece does that for me. I realized it's not that hard. I can do this in anything and everything. And it's just one of the things I have to do is I sort of have to gently nudge a few people out of my life that cause me grief. And so they have to go get bump. They need to go elsewhere. And works great. I do that when I make my meals. I do that when I clean house. I was telling somebody the other day, I actually make everything when I have to clean my kitchen. That's used to be my worst job ever. Now I enjoy cleaning my kitchen because I'm having company this evening, and this is going to be so awesome, and it is. Then I enjoy cleaning my kitchen, and on it goes. But so it started most certainly when I was building my other house, and you get feelings of it. You get this could work, and this could work, and this, and so there. One of the things that it started, I was building the stairway, and it had 3 floors like this as well. So it had a pretty nice stairway. So it's like, how can I make stairs fun? Because they're a pain in the butt to build. And how can I make stairs fun? I don't know where it came from, but anyhow, I figured. Now I know. So I built right on the side of the stairs, the same height as the steps itself, right from up top, all the way down was a slide for the kids.
That's fun.
Exactly. Now we have fun stairs. I can walk and the kids can slide. And it's a slope that they're not going to go out of control. They can just kind of gently ease their way down the stairs. And it's a fun stairway, It's those sorts of things that you can, that house started it. And this one I've done probably 95% of it has been that way. There's been zero stress in this house, this home, zero, none whatsoever. It's all been fantastic.
It's amazing because I think so many people want to get to a place like this in their lives, and or maybe they don't even know. They don't even know the stress that they're under. I think that's maybe a common thing as well too. But anyway, I'm deeply inspired. I'm deeply inspired by you speaking. I am truly, because I know that for myself, I have a lot of room for improvement to get to places that you're describing, and yeah, I want to go on the journey to get there because life is more fun when you make it fun. There's no question about it.
Absolutely. And that part of it is a state of mind. It really is. When we, there's a lot of people that are, and I don't really want to point fingers. I was going to say depressed, but it's more, I believe we have a choice. I really believe that we have a choice. And if we are positive thinkers, or if we think along those lines, it will eventually get imprinted in our brain and it will become part of it. We won't, our default, if we think of something, if we think of, oh, somebody fell down, our default is, it's a horrible thing, they broke their bones or whatever. We go to that. And so my job is to change that default so that it's always a positive thing. My brain needs to be defaulted that it goes into that positive, absolute positive thing, that we can make this work. It becomes natural. You don't have to think about it anymore. I'm way past having to think about it every day. It's just how it works.
Incredible.
It does. It's pretty cool.
Something else I wanted to ask about was that you mentioned that you host a lot of people in your home as well too, and that there was a couple that you met through the local theater society, the Solstice Society, years ago. That you kind of had a bit of an inspiration of a space that they had. I don't know if you feel like mentioning a little bit of that story and about people being welcomed into the house, if you feel comfortable mentioning that or not.
Sure. Yeah. Let's go there. It's important. It's a really important. It's one of the motivations for building this place. It really is.
Yeah.
And so that couple, when a long time ago, their names were Peter and Margaret Adamsons, and they had a moderate home, but they had one room and they called it the green room, and there's a portion of it they called the schnookery, and so they would open that room up to anybody and everybody who had wanted to maybe do a rehearsal for a choir, or maybe a wedding rehearsal, or the Solstice Theater. They would rehearse there. It was just for anything, but lots of it based more on the artistic side of things. And so they opened it up and anybody could come and do this. You just had to call and make sure it wasn't being used, and then you could use this space. And I thought that was just absolutely brilliant. I really thought that was really a great part of the community. So here, I always had that in the back of my mind that I would like to be a part of that. And so that's what I've done here. So I've opened the home up. It's to anything and anybody, as long as you have a local connection. You can't come from Vancouver and look for a cheap place to do any of this stuff. That's not what this is about. This is about community. And if you want to have a 90 or 100 person wedding in here, you're more than welcome to have the wedding in here. And you can cater. I'm not going to cook for you, but you won't want me to cook for you. But if you want to cater or bring in cooks or whatever, you can make that happen. Have your wedding, have all the stuff, whether it's, the Solstice Theater. They were just here on Friday. They just did a big to-do for 30 people. They had a dinner and then auditions for the future plays. There's lots of anniversaries. There's music videos happen here. I don't know if you know Sarah Smith. You know Sarah Smith.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, we just finished shooting a music video for her in here, and we spent 2 days filming, and on it goes. It just goes on and on and on and on and on, and that's what I want. And the key is it's all free. There's no costs involved. Whatever you want to do here, All I ask is I'll have it clean when you arrive. Please leave it clean when you leave. And that's it. That's all that happens. I think that's a huge part of being part of a community. It absolutely is. This house, it's ridiculously large for one person to live in. That's a waste in today's world. And I know that. But how I can compensate is to make it a community house so people can come and enjoy and do what they want. So that's where all that comes in. It's fantastic. There's no admission to anything. There's no charges, nothing at all. All I say, if you're going to have dinner, please leave a few leftovers in the fridge for me. And that's it.
That is really generous of you. That's incredibly generous.
But it's part of the community. So I'll back up the part of the community thing. So when my last house burned down, first off, I'm not a good cook to start off with. I've never have been. And I still am trying to learn how to cook. I struggle with it. I can't. Anyhow, that's beside the point. And I burnt the house down trying to cook. So when I did that, and then the 11 years following while I built this house, during that whole time, I've never had to cook. People brought me food for that whole 11 years. They would leave a pot full of something in the fridge, pot full of chili or pot full of stew or something or soup. And then 4 days later, there's something else in the fridge or something on my doorstep for the whole 11 years. I never, maybe had to have toast for breakfast or something, that kind of stuff. But my main food was always delivered for that 11 years. And half the time, I don't even know from whom. That's the kind of community we live in. And then when my house was done, my kitchen was done, I put the word out that, thank you, it's enough. From here on in, I can manage on my own, and I need to do this on my own, and I haven't had anybody bring me any food at all, which is great. So that's part of living in a community, whether it's food or whether it's helping. That's helped me incredible that everyone brought so much food. 11 years of it.
Yeah, it's a really incredible story that it went on for that long, and you didn't even know sometimes.
Well, lots of times I don't know, but I knew most of the people, but lots of times I didn't know.
Yeah,
because I'd be in town and I'd come home and there's a pot of something in the fridge or at my doorstep or something, and you just learn to accept it because that's what the community is all about.
That's easily one of the most incredible stories I've heard about our island. It's staggering, the length of time and the effort that people put into that. That must have felt so nice to be.
It was. It's incredible, and I think a lot of people realized, the difficulty I had, because my other home that burned was very nice. It was nicer than this one. That's my opinion, and that was it almost killed me. It was devastating, and everybody realized the level of trauma that I went through, and so they're just there, and they just keep coming, and keep coming. Yeah. It's awesome. But that's what this community is.
Yeah. I don't want to skip over aspects of the house that you'd like to talk about. So are there certain features that you want to talk about?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't mind, but there's also one that's not really the house. And that goes back to what we just talked about the fun and the play and the work, the leisure and the labor, how it comes together.
Yeah.
And you're wondering when that sort of started. But there's an important point in my world where that started. So during my last house, the beginning part of it, so that's 20 some years ago or whatever, I was told a few times that I had problems listening. I wasn't a very good listener. And it got mentioned too many times because it was starting to bother me. Too many people, too many friends brought that up. And so I decided to actually do something about that. I went to a 5-day active listening course, 5 full days. I've done a lot of courses, done a lot of stuff in my life. That's by far, far the best self-help thing I ever did. It's impossible for anyone else to listen to me if I haven't learned to listen to them. And I have to listen first. And if I listen first to what you have to say, and I'm talking proper listening, not just shutting up, proper listening, in return, that human will listen to me or those people. And that to me has always been a very, very, very important part. So when I listen not only to another human but I listen to an animal, I listen to a bear. When I watch and I listen to them, whether it's nonverbal or verbal, that is incredibly important to listen. It also works with your body and your mind. You have to listen to your body, what it wants to do and what it will allow you to do, and you have to listen to your mind. So it's all about all these elements of listening are incredibly important in order to achieve that flow between leisure and labor, between play and work. It's very important to listen to all these things. For me, it was. So it's an important element how I got to where I am today. It's that listening thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's deeply important. I know for myself, I get complimented by people on occasion for being a good listener. And I really enjoy listening. I love hearing about people's stories and listening. But what you're also describing about listening to yourself, listening to your mind, and listening to your body, those sound like really equally important things.
They are.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I want to bring up is I want to bring up the longevity of the house. So in today's world, when we build homes, when they approve a new home, they approve almost anything that will last just slightly longer than the mortgage. And that's what they approve. Anything goes as long as it exceeds the mortgage. I personally don't think that that's a good, healthy place to be. That's not sustainable in our world. It just isn't. And that's why we should kind of step back. I feel we should step back. That's what I did. Step back and went back to stone. Now, I'm not inventing a single thing. I'm not reinventing anything at all. I'm just copying what people did 500 years ago, 600 years ago. And those places are still standing. And I'm just copying that. And I'm just saying, I think that's important. That was an important motivator for me. So
the length of time that this is going to be standing, this is probably going to outlast any other structure on the island.
It's meant to be, because all the windows, everything that I've designed, all the window frames and the whole bit. So it's 8 earthquake rated. So 8's a big one.
Yeah.
And so it's all rated to deal with an 8. So yes. So the longevity here is between the official estimates from the geotechs and whatnot is between 800 and 1,000 years. That's the life of this house.
That is incredible.
And I really believe I'm not reinventing anything. That's how homes used to be built. Castles, churches, all that kind of stuff. And I really think we need to take a look at that. We need to go back to that sort of a thing. I personally think so. I think it's very, very important for us, humanity, to have a good long life. We can't keep chopping the trees down and just building something for 30 years and then dozing it over and doing it again. That just doesn't make sense.
Is it possible to build more? Like, if there's one place in North America that's available to have the appropriate stone to use, is it possible to have the resources to build similar to how you have? Or would you suggest concrete, or what would be a way to go about doing that?
Well, the whole downside to all this is our way of life. And that's because the bank won't provide a mortgage for any house like this. They won't do it.
Really?
Because it doesn't fit in their model.
Okay.
Does not fit. Because so if you go, let's say you walk into a bank and you want to build a brand new house, and they go, oh yeah, and you want a mortgage and you pay your usual 25% down and all that kind of stuff, and they go, okay, but one of the riders that's in the agreement is that your house will be done in 6 months. You go in there and say, well, it's going to take me 11 years to build. You're going to be bouncing on your butt out that door faster than you can shake a stick at. They do not want to listen to you at all. They just won't. And so if you talk sweetly, you can maybe get it for a year. Okay, well, it's going to take me a year, but this is why. But if you have anything longer than that, the bank just doesn't want to listen to you. So that really limits. And it's unfortunate, but that's the culture we live in. That's the economic culture we live in. It's unfortunate that they do that, because that limits all of anybody ever doing this. just stops everyone
Yeah.
dead in their tracks.
Yeah. Banks, love them, hate them, mostly hate them.
Yeah.
I don't know if I love them.
We've used them most of us have used them at one point in our lives, and I get that, but oh boy, it's just not a good thing. Yeah.
Any last things about the house that you want to finish off by saying?
Okay, well, real quickly, one of the things about the design, I mentioned it to you last time, and it's always been important for me to make a house feel homey and comfortable and the whole bit, and it's all about symmetry and asymmetrical. And I'm an absolute strong believer, even though this house is all the blocks of stone are symmetrical, but each and every things in this house are very asymmetrical. As in this whole corner by the fireplace, we're just sitting in front of this, but every portion of the house has some asymmetrical portions to it. It really, really does. And I think it's very important because it's very pleasing to the eye to have a proper mix of both. One or the other, it'll hold up, and it's kind of funky if it's all asymmetrical. That makes it a Dr. Seuss house, and or if it's all symmetrical, that makes it an absolute row housing somewhere. Bang, 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 and they're functional. But if you're going to have a combination of both, I think, in my mind, that's very, very pleasing to the eye and also to the soul when you sit in it and be in it. Yeah, I'll stop there.
But it's interesting because when you did point it out, I didn't notice it before, but as soon as you began pointing out small little things, I was like, oh yeah, look at that. I thought that was symmetrical, but it's definitely not symmetrical, right? And it is really pleasing to the eye. There's no doubt about it.
It is. It really is, and it works. And so that's just a design thing. That's just that I'm stuck on. I always try to incorporate that too in everything that I do. I try to incorporate that to just make it a little bit more fun.
The symmetrical and the asymmetrical, you try to incorporate that into everything.
Into everything. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Just to bring it some uniqueness, but it's pleasing to the eye. It really is. There's a difference if you can look at a picture that's completely symmetrical and then one that's completely asymmetrical, and then if you can blend the two pictures in the center, and it's just, I'm picking that center any time of the day. It's just more pleasing. Doesn't make it more functional.
Yeah,
it's just more pleasing to the eye.
It's interesting to relate that back to what you were saying about the work and the play and merging those together, right? Yeah. And like there's this like theme of yin and yang in what you've been saying. And I'm a Libra, and so the scales and having balance, I'm a huge fan of balance myself personally, right? We have two legs. It's not equal. We're not standing equally distributed amounts of weight on both legs as we stand or as we walk, but there's a balance to it. And when it's out of balance, you're falling over, right?
You feel it. Absolutely.
The rest of your body feels it.
Yes.
Yeah. So I appreciate you pointing out both the symmetrical and the asymmetrical. Because
that's a visual, and your brain actually feels it, but it may not feel it enough to make you aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, so when a person leaves and they're talking to their spouse in the car and they go, wow, it was just so nice to sit in front of that fireplace tonight. That was just the best. And so that will be their comment, and they would, it was so comfortable and the whole bit. But that's portion of it. There's lots of other bits, but that's most certainly a portion of it.
Did you know when you spent the time designing the house?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
That's been part of my life for a long, 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 long time. Yeah, that's always been part of that.
Let's bring this interview home here, and we'll talk about Christmas time. So currently it's mid-January, and we've just finished the holiday season, and I think it'd be interesting to hear a little bit about how your holiday season was.
Well, like we talked earlier, my holiday season gets very busy, but it's busy by my own choice. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in my world, but we'll just mention one in particular, which is it's a lot of fun. It's again incorporating fun into my world. I don't have a good name for this program. I call it my Rose program. That's pretty boring, but first off, it's all about seniors, and it's all about, I think the right word would be impoverished. I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but people that don't have families and they don't have a whole lot of money and or no money, and they're just kind of stuck at home over the Christmas holidays. So I started a long time ago, well, not a long time ago, a dozen years or so ago, and started delivering roses. I tried lots of other things and I couldn't get anything to work really well. So I started buying roses, and then I would make bouquets, and I would hand deliver roses to these people, whether they were in seniors' homes or whether they were in individual homes living on their own with no family and no money, of course. And they were they had to be by themselves at Christmas time, which I think is a shame. So how all this works is currently I'm doing 3 or 4 different seniors complexes, and then lots and lots of individuals as well. I make bouquets right from Camel River, right down to Victoria, Duncan, Nanaimo, and anywhere and everywhere, everything in between. I do this completely on my own, and with the help of Costco, they provide, I don't want this to be a big box store advertisement, but I still have to mention them. They provide the freight to make it all happen. So I buy the roses. I buy all the roses from plantations in Ecuador, and it's the same place Costco buys theirs, and Costco allows me to double up with them. All my flowers come on jets from them, and so make it possible for me to do this. So I make the arrangements the months before, but the actual delivery of roses starts right around the 1st of December, depending on which day of the week it is. And then I make bouquets, usually during the evening, during the night, and then deliver them the next day to different homes, different places, hand deliver them all personally to people. And it brings great joy to a lot of these people. Some of the homes, they allow me into the places, and everyone is just so helpful, and they make all this work, and it just brings a ton of happiness and joy to just a lot of people. So as far as the volume of I do this year, it was about 460, maybe 470 different individual homes, people that got the bouquets. So just makes a lot of people happy at Christmas time.
Yeah, well, this is really great. We talked about this before we recorded, and I think this is worth sharing because it's really, again, inspiring to me as well, too. Some of the reactions that people have for getting bouquets. So the people that are receiving these are seniors that live on their own, mostly?
Yes, they're on their own, or they're in a home, a seniors complex. So they're still on their own. They have their own suite, but they're completely on their own.
In your time dropping these bouquets off for individuals, you've had some pretty great reactions from people who are surprised and don't know who this bouquet is actually from. Because when you're delivering it, what do you tell them?
So the whole idea about this is the Christmas is sort of the background. So when I deliver roses, I never ever tell them that. They always ask where they're from. And I always say that I don't know. I'm just a delivery person. And I said, but I can just imagine that it's probably from either a loved one or maybe you have a secret admirer or somebody really, appreciates you. So that's where it comes from. But I don't know who it is. I just deliver, and that's how it works. And the people, you can just see it in their eyes. They start wondering who sent this. Because they're going through their memory bank of friends and family of who would possibly do this. And so the concept behind all this is when the person closes the door and they're inside, they're going to start wondering who this is from. And eventually they will come up with, somebody, a friend in Ontario or who knows where, and it's going to bother them, and they will eventually phone that person. And then that person's going to say, no, it wasn't her. It might have been, Fred from over there or whatever. And a series of phone calls is going to go around for the next week or however long, wondering where these roses came from. And that's the whole idea, is to get those connections, get these people to call each other and it has nothing to do with the roses, but the rose triggers that question of who brought it. And so therefore I can never say it comes from me. I have to always say that it comes from somebody else. And it triggers these people for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 days calling friends and family members, which they normally might not have done.
Right, trying to solve this mystery of these
Exactly.
these flowers that show up unexpectedly to them. And you handed out about 470 bouquets.
This year was 470 bouquets. I think it was 468 or something like that.
That's a lot of flowers.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's why it takes it. My last flowers always get delivered right at the end of Christmas Day. So when I come home on the last ferry, that's it. I'm done. I'm finished. But that's so it starts right at the beginning of December right through to every single day.
And you've been doing this for over a decade now?
Yes.
Wow.
Every year I try to expand.
Mhm.
I have a little bit more. Like I was saying to you, next year I'm going to try to expand to another city and try to just get, because I can still do a bit more. And so I'm going to just keep going until I've done enough, or not enough, but that I can't do anymore. I'm just going to at some point, but still I can still do some more.
Yeah. And what drives you to do this?
Well, I suck at giving Christmas presents to anybody and everybody. No, the drive is really just about, people that need somebody at Christmas time. I'm a big Christmas person. We sit here in front of a 9-foot Christmas tree, and I love Christmas, but particularly during COVID, people couldn't celebrate Christmas, and I just try to put a smile on a few people's faces.
Yeah, well, it's pretty cool. Some of the stories you told me earlier about people having some pretty emphatic reactions to receiving these flowers unexpectedly, and it seems like everybody loves flowers, and most of us like a good mystery as well too.
Yeah. Do you want me to share one of those stories?
Please.
Okay. So this one particular complete stranger to me. So I knock on the door. This lady comes out, and she's got a walker, and she's really struggling. And so I give her the roses, and she of course asks who they're from, and I tell her the same story which I mentioned earlier that I don't know. And so I say Merry Christmas to her, and she takes the roses and she goes back in, but she doesn't close the door. And she turns to go down the hallway, so I can't see what's inside. But she's going, Mary, Mary, look what I got. And she's all excited, and they're back and forth, and who brought these, and all this, all that sort of stuff. And they were both very, very happy. And I'm still standing out there waiting. And then all of a sudden there's this silence. There's nothing. And then 10 seconds later, she comes around the corner, and she comes to the door, and she goes, I forgot my walker. And she turns around and walks back in the door and closes it behind her. And that to me is just the best, because for a few brief moments, she didn't require her walker. And it was all about flowers, all about roses. So having said that, that's all about the receiving, the giving, and the receiving. So now, once again, I'm going to go refer back to that flow that I talked earlier about labor and leisure. Here's another aspect, and it's receiving and giving, gifting and receiving. So when I can give and receive, they are no longer opposites. They are now one. So the giving provides me with an incredible amount of joy. The people as well, but it's an absolute win-win-win-win-win situation all the way around. And that flow is now working again. Giving and receiving are no longer opposite. They're the same thing.
Yeah.
That's what it does for me, and it does incredible stuff for other folks as well. And so it's just because of a few simple roses. It's a difference we can make.
No, that's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. And I think it's an underestimated part of existence, giving to others.
I have some friends, and we talk about this all the time, and my friends say, oh, yeah, well, we give all the time. I write a check to this and this and this people. And I'm going, okay, but have you ever tried giving your time? Why would I want to do that? My time's too important to me. Okay. So my version of that is there's times and places where you have to write a check, but for the most part, it's about giving time. You'll find the true gift, giving and receiving. You'll find that flow between the two of them if you give your time.
Well, I'm really thankful you gave your time tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I'm sincerely am, really. And I'll leave the last word with you. Is there anything else you want to end off by saying to finish off this podcast
Oh,
interview?
I'm totally good. I thank you for spending the time and making all this work.
Thank you so much for listening to that. Wasn't that amazing? I was absolutely amazed. My goodness. Gregory and I made a short little video that is on my Facebook page. It's called The Stories That Brought You Here, Pender Island. If you'd like to see a little bit of the inside of Gregory's home, you can go there and check it out. If you enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to share it with anyone, with family or friends or strangers alike. I'd like to thank Ben McConkey for providing the theme music to this podcast. I would like to thank you for being here to listen to this. I'd like to thank Gregory again for offering his time and his home to do this recording in. And as I mentioned in the beginning, if you're at all interested in the idea of recording your own or a family member's life story, myaudiomemoir.com is the place to go for that. I wish you all the best. Going to have episodes coming out about once a month at this point. We'll see you again soon. Until next time.